Alright, what's up y'all, it's LakerFan here. As y'all can see by the title of today's video, ranking every point guard build in NBA 2K20 in tiers E through S. So we're going to start from the bottom, go to the top, reveal it in that order. I hope y'all enjoy. If you do, feel free to drop a like, sub if you're new, turn on them noties, all that good stuff. Let's try to get 1 to 1,000 likes in the first 24 hours. And if this video does get to 1,000 likes in the first 24 hours, I'll do the big man version tomorrow. So I hope y'all enjoy. Without further ado, we're going to get straight into this. Now there's a lot of complications you can do with making this video. A lot of people might make this red and blue pie chart as a point guard to play as a lock on stage 3s and then still be a solid PG on the 2v2 where you could spot up corner for another play glass or something like that. We see that all the time, you know, in some stage wagers and stuff like that, and comp duos, where this build is a good spot up, but it doesn't run point guard very well. So that's what we're here to talk about. How well does your build and your pie chart run point guard in 2K20, whether it be for the 2v2, the 3v3. If it's great at both, that goes even higher on the list. We're factoring all that stuff in. So anyway, without further ado, hope y'all enjoy. Starting at the E tier, we have the pure slasher. So again, keep in mind, just to compare it to other builds, to only have Hall of Fame finishing is not very good, and to be below 6'6" or anything like that with this pie chart is I'm just not a fan of. Now, if you make this around 6'8", 6'9", something like that, you bring good height, you bring good dominance as far as like other point guards can't guard you at all. And granted, a 6'5" pure slash would be hard for another point guard to defend, but size comes with slashing. It's very hard to deal with the taller slashers. The shorter you are, the easier it is to deal with you. And I know I'm not going to offend a lot of people by putting this on, like, low on the list, because not a lot of people make a 6'5" or below pure slasher. It just doesn't make sense to. Now, I will say, to be a point guard as a pure slasher would actually be kind of tight in the sense that you get gold dimer and gold floor general for being a point guard, but to be 6'6", that's just a problem. I'm not a big fan of it. So coming into the D tier, we got the slash defender and the pure lock. Like I was saying, you can make these builds at point guard to be a good spot up lock on the 3v3 court or even the 2v2 and just, you know, sit in the corner, stuff like that too. But we're talking running point guard functionality. How good is it? And these builds just aren't really comp when it comes to running as a point guard on the 2v2 or 3v3, especially not 3v3 where 3s rule, obviously. And on 2v2, it is good to be a finishing build when it comes to the make it take it aspect of it, but as soon as somebody puts a big man on you and you're below 6'6" and you have a slashing build, it just gets real problematic. And same with the pure lock. This build right here, even as a spot up, has its own shooting struggles where you have 3 or 4 shooting badges, 53 pointer. On 2v2, that's just not acceptable. People will let you shoot all day, even as a spot up, we're talking. Now, that just becomes a whole different story when we're talking running as a point guard. Now, the thing that brings these builds a little bit higher than the pure slash, in my opinion, is obviously they provide good defense. So even if you don't provide very good offense, you do still, you know, bring the defensive ability to get you some stops and be able to compete with some teams, because as we know, defense rules in this game. But as far as the pure slasher goes, it just doesn't provide very good defense. Still provides pretty much relatively the same amount of offense as these builds too. Doesn't really get a 3-pointer increase. It does get a couple more shooting badges, but for the drop off in defense, it's just not really worth it. Coming into the C tier, we got the pure sharp and the play slash. So the problem with both these builds is flat out defense. With the play slash, if you want to have good shooting badges with 14 of them or something like that, you got to use useless ratings with post fade and free throw. Obviously you want good playmaking, good finishing. So with that post fade and free throw rating to get your shooting badges and have solid 3-point rating as well, you have to directly take a hit on your defense. And that is the problem with this pie chart. If 2K would allow you to make this more balanced, as far as, like, you know, not having to put the ratings into free throw and post fade to be able to get your shooting badges, then I think this build would be ruling 2K as far as having really good physicals, really good ability to play defense, while not having Hall of Fame defense. You, like I said, still have good physicals as far as the speed, vert, and all that stuff goes. But with all that said, just because the build has really bad defense or it lacks in one area, say if you make this with no shooting but have good defense, then there's no point in making the build, you know, just flat out. But anyway, as far as its good side, obviously it's solid for the 2v2. It's not a big fan of the 3v3 court, I will say, because like I said, 3-pointers rule, and if you don't bring any defense to the table while not being able to shoot too well and just being a spot up, you don't really provide too much on the 3v3 court. Now, with the pure sharp, this is where it gets interesting, because like I was saying, this build lacks defense, and that's more just from the physical aspect. It doesn't have good speed, vertical, anything like that. The defensive ratings themselves are pretty low. But what you can do with this build, because I know this is mostly the 2v2 meta as far as like if you're going to use this build, is to not have any finishing at all. Just rely on your fadeaways from the mid-range or post fades as well, and then you can just have crazy shooting ability, solid playmaking, and solid defense while having literally nothing on the finishing. So that's what keeps us in the C tier. I will say though, as far as a point guard build, there's really just no sense in making this, because why not just make a PLAYSHARP? I've talked about this on Twitter sometimes. Why not just make a PLAYSHARP if you're going to make a PureSharp? Because you're taking such a sacrifice when it comes to the speed and playmaking ability, and then you don't really gain anything too much, because to have 30 shooting badges is just extra. To have 95 3-pointer or 99 3-pointer is kind of just extra as well, when with a PLAYSHARP you could have like 92, 93. All be that. But anyway, moving along to the B tier, we got the two-way sharp. This build is actually really slept on. I might even have this a little too low. The problem with it though is it's a good secondary ball handler. If you bring it into the 2v2 and have another viable ball handler, I think this is a really good build. If you bring it into the 3v3 and have a really good ball handler at the 1 while still being your good like team's lockdown pretty much, and to guard the other team's point guard, then I think this is a good build. But to just rely on this build to run as your only point guard or something like that, or even on the 2v2 if you're running with a rim sharp where it's not a second ball handler, I don't think this is really a comp build. Now, I will say in the right hands, it's pretty solid. It has really good balance to it. You can have good defense, good shooting, solid finishing where you actually have around 78 to 80 driving dunk at max ability, and then you have good speed. So along with the good speed comes solid playmaking. That's kind of just how this game works. It's kind of stupid if that's what we're really talking about, because you don't even need to have super high ball handling to be a good ball handler in this game, because you can just rely on the fact that your build has good speed and good shooting. Because of being a defender, it has good speed. So anyway, nonetheless, it's not a comp 3v3 point guard build. It's not exactly the best 2v2 point guard build either, but it's still pretty solid, so that's why we keep it in the B tier. Moving along to the A tier, this is where things get really interesting. So we have the slash sharp and the pure play. Now, the reason I'm going to talk about this first and foremost, the reason I have the pure play in the A tier instead of the B tier is that this build is so well-rounded and so versatile. It's not the meta on any court. I'm talking, it's not the 2v2 meta point guard, it's not the 3v3 meta point guard, it's not the pro-am meta point guard, but it's like literally number 2 or number 3 in every one of those. So that keeps it in the A tier for me. When you're talking about the average ability of this build, has, you know, really good finishing ability, you can still get contact dunks. Now the problem with this build too is to have those contact dunks, you have to be a 99.9 and you can't be anything over 6'5". That is the one struggle with this build, but with all that said, you have great physicals. If you go with the speed and vert at like 6'5", you can have maxed out speed, vert, and excel. And then you still have solid shooting ability, you have solid finishing ability, okay defense depending on how you make it, and then great playmaking. It's pretty much a given, pure playmaker. It's exactly what you would expect it to do. I just will say, if they gave this build better finishing, I think it would be like elite, but that's just not the case. You have to be a 99.9 to have the contact dunks. Now, with that said too, in the A tier, we have the slash sharp, where this is the pro-am meta, and I will say it's like right there when it comes to the 3v3 meta as well, and it's right there with the 2v2 meta too. So as far as the slash sharp goes, like I said, best pro-am build in the game as far as the point guards go. Just to be able to get contact dunks is such a bailout. And for the 3v3, it's best with a rim sharp, where you can just either ISO or you can hit the pick and pops. This build, as far as the finishing, that's a threat, and then to have the Hall of Fame shooting is tough as well. And then if you're around 6'2", anywhere between 6'2" and 6'4", something like that, it's really good when it comes to the playmaking. It does lack a little bit when it comes to the speed in comparison to the PLAYSHARP, especially if you're going to try to go 6'4" with it. But I'd say 6'2". If you're not worried about the defense, I think this is a great build, like flat out. It has great shooting, great finishing, and solid playmaking. Now, that solid playmaking is low-key like more than solid. I'm just going to put it like that. Speed, like I said, is all that really playmaking relies on. And to have gold dimer is not that big of a deal. To have quick first step on gold, not that big of a hit. So in the S tier, we have the king of the 2v2 court right here with the play lock, and then king of the 3v3 court with the play sharp. Now, I will say, with the play sharp, it requires good stick skill. Not anybody can just hop on this build and be good. You got to be good when it comes to getting yourself open, using screens, using ISO, whatever it may be. This is just flat out an offensive machine, but it definitely lacks in the defensive category. A lot of stage meta point guards when it comes to the play sharps, or play shots as they call them. This can be an offensive threat or a playmaking shot creator, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, a lot of people, they'll go with the finishing, shooting, and playmaking completely maxed out and just do lateral quickness and perimeter defense on this. And it does become a problem. And at 6'1" or 6'2", that's what the stage meta is, because it's such an offensive threat. Now, on defense, it becomes a complete like liability, but in the stage, you don't have to worry about it too much. On the park, however, when you're playing with people who don't really switch on the ball if they're locks or anything like that, or you can't really avoid people because they don't really just bring a complete offensive liability to the park, this build becomes a whole lot more problematic. So just keep that in mind. In my opinion, it's S tier, but for somebody who just strictly plays park and isn't the most skilled build and like, you know, skilled player, I would just say probably to stay away from this build. So on the other hand, you have the play lock, and if you play any park, I'm talking 3v3, 2v2 with this build, you will absolutely love it. You can line up at the 1, lock down the other team's point guard, stuff like that too. This is the 2v2 meta, whether you're talking about park or stage. It has contact dunks, Hall of Fame defense, Hall of Fame playmaking, and can still shoot with 10 shooting badges. Now with this build comes the shooting struggle. If you can't shoot with 10 shooting badges and 65 3-pointer, it does become a little problematic, but you still get bailed out by the Hall of Fame. I almost said Hall of Fame finishing, but it flat out feels like Hall of Fame finish. You get contact dunks, you get long athlete layup package, you get around like 10 to 12 finishing badges as well. It's just flat out the best point guard build in the game. Now the problem with it is you can't really run it in the stage 3v3 as far as the PGs go, because you're flat out not going to get enough 3-pointers up, or if you do bring this in as the point guard, you have to rely on the fact that you're running 3 locks, and you're just going to have to be kind of a committee team where you're going to give it to the weak link and, for instance, take it at the stage play sharps who come in with the 6-1s with no defense, and whoever this guy tries to line up on, you go at his head. Now, if you have a weak link on your team when you're coming into that stage 3 stuff, and say you have somebody who isn't a viable ball handler option, this guy will find him and he will guard him flat out. And if he isn't setting screens, if he isn't taking the ball as a ball handler, then running point guard as this build becomes a whole lot more problematic, because you're taking it straight at lockdown's heads. Every single time you're gonna have a lockdown on you. It's flat out just like that. So like I was saying, this build as far as like park 3s, really good. Just keep in mind you have to be able to shoot pretty decently, but you do get bailed out, like I said, by the finishing. And then on 2v2, whether it be park or stage, it's just flat out the best point guard build in the game. You would just run 2 of these no matter what, whether it be as the big man and as the point guard. So anyway, that's all for the video. I hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, feel free to drop a like, sub if you're new, turn on them noties, all that good stuff. Let's try this 1 to 1,000 likes in the first 24 hours. And like I said, if this does hit 1,000 likes in the first 24 hours, I'll bring the big man version of this video tomorrow. I don't really doubt that it will though. Anyway, if you made it to the end of the video, put point guard or PG in the comments to show your support that you made it all the way through. And let me know what your list is looking like. Let me know what your S tier or E tier looks like. Just tell me what you think the best build or the worst build is. Or you can flat out give me the whole list. S, A, B, C, D, E, whatever you want to do. Just feel free to drop it in the comments, show your support. On that, hope y'all enjoyed. Take it easy, man. Peace.